Go live. Yes, that's right. Get her. I like that, Morgan. Good. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you. The first thing that I'm going to show you is the agenda, just so that we have a clear idea of what's happening today. On the screen now, you should no longer see my face, but now see the agenda. This agenda is interactive. There's lots going on here. This is the place that you want to be to go to certain activities that we're going to do today. It's a place for you to get back to the Google Hangout. It gives you additional information. It gives you a little homework assignment. So there's all these things that come out of this agenda. So it's a very, very important document. There's two options that you have right now. You can either follow along on my screen, or you can literally click on any of these links and go to places as I talk about them. So it's up to you. I imagine you're only working with one screen. So if you're working with one screen, what will happen is you'll lose the Google Plus Hangout screen. It'll just be behind your other windows. So it just depends on what your comfort level is of where things are. And you go, oh no, I lost where he is. You might want to just watch the screen, because I'm going to have everything up that you need for the most part. So you can see that we're in session 1. And then as you go down this document, you can see all the different sessions. We just want to prepare you to let you know what the topics are going to be, so you have a good understanding of where the learning is headed and what to expect in the next couple of sessions. You're going to see links added to the agenda as we go, and that's only because I want to add things that we need. So I'm 2 sessions ahead. I just want to make sure that if I need to add anything or introduce new material, that I can use this living document to add links that are necessary to the group. So our first thing today we're going to be looking at is who we are as Literacy TA, do a little bit of introduction, and then the achievement triangle. And then we're going to go through there, and you can see the discussions that we're going to have today, and then the activity, and then we'll come back to this. So I'm going to go ahead and move over to the presentation, which should be right up on your screen. And if I press present, it should take over the entire screen for you. So close reading. What we're talking about here is giving kids the tools and giving them access to break down text in very purposeful ways. And many of us don't have the literacy background to help students access the kinds of reading that we do as proficient academics. And what we want to try to do is give them access to those tools and approaches, and give them the confidence that they need to go ahead and break apart a text, so they feel that they can read at a high level, and they feel that they can read text across content areas. A lot of times an English teacher will give the reading skills to kids, and then those reading skills sometimes don't apply to history or science. And those skills that we're teaching in our English classes really apply to, poetry and fiction. So our students in other subject areas struggle if those subject area teachers are not teaching specific skills that go across content. So close reading for Literacy TA is going to give you access, whether you're an English teacher or not, to skills that cut across content area. And you are going to be able to use these skills across the school. You'll be able to use them in science classes, in history classes, in your art classes, in all subject areas you'll be able to use them. Your students will be able to use them. So there's 3 learning outcomes for today. We want to deepen understanding of Literacy TA's explicit skill-based approach. So our main philosophy is that we need to slow down and make transparent what good readers do. And in order to do that, we have to be explicit in our approach. We have to show our kids every step in the process. We want to look at purpose-driven reading today and talk about why that's important and how that helps kids. And then learn how the TA, which all of you guys will get as a result of taking this training, how the TA can support close reading skills. So I'm going to show you some very cool things today. And I think at the end you're going to want to jump on and start working with TA. So I have a way of capturing your name and email today, And then after I capture that name and email, I'm going to go ahead and add you to the TA list, and you'll get a welcome email from us. And as soon as you get that welcome email, you can change your password, and you'll have a whole year's access to TA, which stands for the teacher assistant. So that's going to happen after this session today. So literacy TA, quite simply, is a pathway for students to learn. So we give kids the access, the direction for learning by reading, speaking, and writing about text. And for teachers, we're a framework. We're not a curriculum that you have to follow. We're not a curriculum that you have to replace your favorite text with. We are a way to teach those texts. We are a way to teach the reading that needs to happen in your classroom, and a way for teaching the writing that follows the reading. So we are a framework that applies or can be applied to any class, and it can be applied to any text that you're reading. Our goal is to help students advance their learning through reading, speaking, and writing. So our whole purpose in all of this work is to make sure that students know how to make meaning independently through the text that they read. So that's our whole purpose, is to make sure that kids can make meaning on their own. And of course, we have to help them get there, but that's the ultimate goal. We have 3 different components to our support system. We're offering professional development like you're going through right now. We have online tools that you'll have access to called the TA. And then we have materials and curriculum for students. So we do provide curriculum if teachers want it. We provide books if teachers want them. But we are still that framework. Everything, even in our curriculum and our books, can be transferred over to what you're doing with your normal curriculum and material. So these are the 3 different areas, or 3 different components of our system of support. And then this is a snapshot of what you're going to get after today's session. So our TA offers 60 literacy skills, and with those literacy skills come literacy lessons. You have hundreds of activities that will come with this. You're going to have a research-based approach and process for reading and writing. You're going to have access to a digital planner to help you plan with the new state standards. We're going to go over a writing prompt builder, and that's going to be part of our task today. So writing prompts and how to build those quickly with a tool. And then my website. As soon as you guys have access to TA, you're going to have a teacher website that connects you, your parents, and your students to the resources on Literacy TA. And that happens instantly as soon as you complete the welcome email and change your password. Okay, so I'm going to go over a couple of quotes that I think are very interesting. This is from Doug Buell, who I believe is centered in Wisconsin. He says that many students read to get work done rather than engage in reading to understand. And I find that to be very important, and I think right on. I ask my students, I interview them all the time. I teach middle school English, and I ask them all the time, you know, do you guys read the same way at home that I teach you in class? And they say no. And they say, why not? Because we want to get it done. That's their term. We just want to get it done. And I said, but don't you want to learn? Don't you want to reduce your studying? Don't you want to come to class prepared, understanding at a deeper level? And simply they say no. No, I don't. And I think students view reading as something of a task to complete versus something as a way to learn, as a way to gain knowledge of the world and knowledge about themselves. So I just found that this quote very interesting and applicable. Many students read to get work done rather than engage reading to understand. And then you also have to think about the reading assignments that we give. Think about in a class where the teacher's expectation is for students to answer questions as a check for completion. A student is just going to read in order to answer those questions. A student is going to hunt for the information that best matches the question, and then the student is going to record the information from the text and move on. So there isn't a lot of ownership in that reading, and there's not a lot of work going into it because the ultimate goal is to get the homework grade. The ultimate goal is to get the class assignment finished so that they can move on and not be bothered anymore. And we're going to talk about how we can transfer that ownership of reading to students. Here's another quote that I really like as well, and this is going to set the context for all sessions that we're going to have coming up. Reading simple text can be difficult, and reading complex text can be easy. So to me, what resonates is that if we don't help kids read, then they're going to struggle. And the types of reading assignments that we give in third grade are not going to be enough, or the types of reading skills we give in third grade are not going to be enough for high school students. I taught high school for 11 years. I've taught anywhere from 9th grade EL or ESL to AP seniors. And students, if they don't have the tools, will struggle even with the simplest texts. But if we give them tools for reading, they're going to excel even with the most challenging texts. It's really about what we give them and what sorts of supports we can provide. This is a simple diagram, if you will, of our philosophy. We have a simple philosophy at Literacy TA, and we call it the achievement triangle. We believe that if you challenge students and you increase complexity of thinking, of text, of anything, of task, and you give them the support, your students will achieve. That if you challenge them and then you raise the level of complexity, raise the level of rigor, and all the while give them the support through these three modalities or strategies: modeling, collaboration, and explicit teaching, your students will be very successful. Your students will start to see themselves as capable academics. They'll see themselves as students who can versus students who can't. And this is basically everything that we do, excuse me, runs through this model or philosophy. Challenge, raise the complexity or raise the rigor, and then support them. The problem is we miss one of these three things. We either don't challenge our students enough, or we keep the level of complexity at a kind of a medium space, and they're not really pushed to do something that is beyond their ability, or the support's missing. So we challenge them and we give them something rigorous, but we don't give them any tools or guides to get through that independently or with the teacher so that they feel successful. Think about when you get challenged and you fall from that challenge. If you're not being supported and picked up or shown how not to fall again, your motivation goes down because you don't feel successful. And we want to make sure that our kids feel successful as they go through this. This is the achievement triangle. There's a lot here. You have my permission to take this slide and make it into a poster or whatever you want to do, but it's part of the presentation that you can link to from the agenda where it says Google Slides, and then you can also share this with your colleagues as well. So when I move past this, don't worry, you'll have an opportunity to view it again. And then with the achievement triangle is the cycle of independence. And I know you guys are aware of this concept. Maybe it hasn't been written this way for you. We try to make things very simple at Literacy TA. We try to make them manageable, bite-sized, things that can be processed and duplicated in a classroom. So we have a simple release of responsibility. The teacher always starts with the I do. Even if you're an 11th grade AP teacher, the I do is so important. The teacher needs to be the person, the individual who drives the material, who shows the students how to reach the expectations. You're going to get so much better work. Your quality of work will go up if you demonstrate your expectation for thinking, for completion of tasks, under a document camera, verbally, on a whiteboard, giving them the opportunity to see what you want them to do. Then the we do is a process of me doing a little bit or you doing a little bit, and then they do a little bit. Not independently yet, but with you. So going through conversations. Why would I do this? What do you think we should do here? Yeah, I think the same thing. And walking them through this types of processes that you would go through. And then they do. So the they do now is group work, collaboration. So that's where they are doing the work on their own, but supported by their peers. And then finally the you do is talking to the students as audience that they're now working independently on something that you've taught them to do. And then the cycle continues. With everything new, we're going to start over. The I do, the we do, the they do, and then the you do. Again, this is something that you guys have access to. You guys can go back to it, review it, teach your staff, however you want to handle it. But this is a very simple model to remind us that the explicit instruction starts with I do. We have to explicitly teach, and then we need to get them into collaboration, and then they can stand on their own 2 feet. So our next conversation, which ties directly into the achievement triangle and ties into the cycle of independence, is the concept of skill-based instruction. In its simplest form, what skill-based instruction is the shift, the cognitive shift in your classroom where kids are working on skills every day instead of working on content. So I'm going to make an argument every morning we meet that content is secondary, that information is abundant and out there and at their fingertips. The content itself isn't the focus or shouldn't be the focus. It's the skills that you teach that is the focus of your classroom. So instead of looking at your syllabus as here are the things we're going to read this year, think about it as here are the things we're going to learn this year. Here are the approaches to reading and writing that you will master as a result of taking my class. And as a result of mastering these skills, you're going to learn all sorts of things about different texts, about different writers. You're going to learn all sorts of stories. But the stories and the content and the information is secondary. What we want is the kids learning skills that they can use to make meaning out of the text we give them. And it's a shift. It's a cognitive shift in your classroom. It's a pedagogical shift. So right pedagogy is the instructional practices that we have as teachers. Skill-based instruction is a pedagogical shift. It's asking us as teachers to put skills first, and through skills, knowledge is acquired. Versus content is what drives the things that we do, and then I have some activities that we do to get them engaged in the reading. That's a different way of thinking. Think about a history class where I would outline, here is all of the time periods that we're going to learn. I'm arguing, don't worry about the time periods you're going to learn. Worry about what skills you're going to teach your kids so they can access the material that you give them, and then they'll learn through reading and through writing and through speaking how to well, they'll learn the knowledge that you want as a history teacher. So it's a little bit of a different switch, and this is called, for us, skill-based instruction. And so when we talk about skill-based instruction, and since this is the close reading training, I think it's important to think about the time. So it says here that research suggests the majority of reading time in class should focus on practicing close reading skills. So that's okay, that's what we've heard, we've read it before in research, but what does that really look like? And after looking at different people's interpretations of this and looking at some suggested time frames, Literacy TA has come up with percentages that give you a more of a concrete example of what this looks like. So that's one of the challenges that we have with research, is that they'll tell us things, what is good for kids, but then it's missing the practical application, it's missing the classroom instruction. So what we've done is we've created this little image here to help communicate what does the majority of time look like. So let's just say, for example, you are going to read with your kids. This could be an entire unit, or this can be one class period. Since they're percentages, the times are very flexible here. So I can spend 10 to 20% of my class period during my reading time, front-loading material. Then I can spend 50 to 70% of that time looking at close reading skills and helping kids read text for very purposeful ways, and then 20 to 30% of my reading time doing some sort of after reading or some sort of product writing, poster, presentation. But if you look at this scale, it's clear that in the middle is where we should be spending most of our time. But as a teacher, as a practitioner, when I reflect, I used to spend most of my time front-loading, the second amount of my time after reading, and then very little of my instructional minutes were used to teach kids how to read. Sure, I was sitting at home and they would do some silent reading for 15 minutes, but I wasn't really explicitly teaching my students to read. Now in my classroom, if you were to see my classroom, I'm spending the majority of the class period nose down, pencil in hand, all students engaged, looking at a text, talking about a text. That's what my classroom looks like now, but it used to not look like that. It used to look like showing them videos on the background of this particular time period, giving them lots of front loading, maybe even 3 days worth of front loading so they really understand the material that we're going to read, and they understand the people, where they're from. And the problem with that was they were gaining content knowledge, but they weren't gaining skills that are sustainable and transferable to other environments. And so the work world, the world of academia, was demanding specific things from my kids, but they weren't learning that in my classroom. They were learning content, they were learning lots of information, but that information can be so readily accessible today, it doesn't make sense for me as an educator to spend that time anymore front-loading, and that's the kind of stuff I can send home that they like anyway, and then when they're in front of me, I can really get down with the text and break it apart. At this point, because I've gone over a couple of models, I'm going to just go back real quickly. We looked at the achievement triangle and talked about challenge, complexity, and support. We talked about the cycle of independence, the I do, we do, you do. And then we talked about skill-based instruction and changing your paradigm and pedagogy to think about skills forward, looking at what skills will I teach, and then now selecting text based on those skills, now selecting the types of curriculum I want to teach based on the skills that I want my kids to learn, and then explicit reading instruction. So what does that mean? How much time in a class period or during a unit should I spend teaching close reading? So I'm giving you all of this. Now's the time for us to reflect. So if you want, there's no requirement, but if you would like to, you can unmute your microphone, you can show your face if you want, and we can have a debrief session about what all these things mean, what resonates with you. Are there things that you want more clarification on? Are there things that you say, this is it, this is exactly what I've been trying to tell my staff, or what I've been trying to do myself? All is okay. If you would like to share, you have two ways. You can unmute your microphone and share, or you can type in the chat and share your ideas. I'm going to wait for a couple of seconds to give you guys time to think and then make a decision. If no one shares, I will move on, and it's no problem. I'm going to also show my face, that way it's less intimidating too, so instead of looking at a screen. And to let you know that I'm still here, that I didn't press record or play, and that it's a recorded presentation.
I don't have anything right now, but I'll keep it in mind and possibly share later.
Okay, thanks, Jen.
Okay, there it is. I think it's working for me. I think you touched on actually three of the focuses that we are looking at last year, our academic focus, and moving into this school year. And one of the big changes is that we're trying to make it systemic where we're doing the gradual release of responsibility model, or
Mm-hmm.
what you have the cycle of independence. And
Mm-hmm.
we're actually matching that with the balanced literacy component of the shared reading, the shared writing, the interactive reading, and interactive writing. So it's interesting. I'm going to keep listening and going through the rest of the modules to see how we can pull those strategies
Mm-hmm.
into each of the gradual release or cycle of independence model.
Right. Right. Morgan, I like your honesty, and it's I was working in South Carolina a couple weeks ago, and there was a moment in my presentation. I was there physically. There was a moment in my presentation where I felt like some of the teachers were feeling, oh my gosh, I don't do that, and I need to do this. And I think those are good moments to have as an educator, but I also have to circle back and say, we're never going to be perfect, and we're always going to have those days where we're like, I could have done that a little bit better. I certainly have those days. Um, and we also need to remember that the goal is to improve every day. So the goal for us at Literacy TA is to improve every day. The goal for me as a teacher is to improve every day. And the goal for my students is to improve every day. And if we keep that simple mission intact and think about, you know what, I'm going to improve by doing this today. I'm going to improve by using this technology piece that's going to engage my kids for the 10 minutes. If I constantly think about how I can improve, we're always going to move forward, and we're always going to get where we want to be, instead of being frozen in one place. I have to say, though, I shared the same experience with you. I realized that I spent so much time front loading. When I used to teach the novel Night, I think I would spend 2 weeks on World War II, and I thought it was fantastic, and my kids were really enjoying it. And we talked about Hitler, and I made what are those things used to be called, like a kind of like a blog, and then I made some sort of interactive web cluster that they did all this research on, and I never really taught them how to read Elie Wiesel's work. It was kind of like secondary. It was like, oh yeah, and there's this guy, and he wrote this text, and it's really great. What do you guys think? And yeah, he moved from Saget to this place and that, and he was in the ghetto, and it was more about information instead of skill. And if you see my teaching now, it's a constant reminder. Yeah, they probably know about World War II. They probably want to know more about World War II. This is a great thing I could do for Genius Hour. This is a great thing that I can do for homework. But when they're with me, when my babies are with me, I need to make sure that I'm the one guiding their reading instruction, because there's no one else in their world that can do that right now. And so that's what I focus on. That's what I make my priority, is when they're in front of me, I'm going to teach them how to read well. And then by default, or as a result, them reading well will produce better writing, because they have more to say, they can say things in more sophisticated ways, and then finally they're not just repeating what I say. As teachers, we all know how frustrating that is. When kids listen to you and then they repeat what you say in their papers, that's not what we want. We want kids to think with original thoughts, and they can only do that when they have the tools to think in complex ways. Yeah. So Lillian, you guys can look in the chat. She's talking about has always been such a huge part, and also let me dial back. Front loading is important, especially when students don't have prior knowledge of a certain subject. But let's go to another example, and if you want other content examples, I can give those. But let's think about like of Mice and Men. Do the students really need to know Okies, and do they really need to know how these people lived to understand and read of Mice and Men and Steinbeck's use of rich vocabulary and adjectives? The answer to me is no. Is that interesting information? Yes. But I would rather them learn how to break down Steinbeck's text structure and realize that he uses very specific introductions in all of his novels, and those introductions are beautiful and unique to him. For what reason? And I want them to be able to answer that question. What is it about Steinbeck's intros to every chapter that makes Steinbeck who he is as an artist, as a novelist? I want them to answer that question, not who were Okies and what did they do, because then they're just fact gathering. They're going out and they're gathering facts, and that's not going to help them transfer into being a better reader in science and a better reader in history, because they won't see the things I want them to see and what good readers see. But knowing that, they need to have some of those, as Lillian you're saying, they need to have some of those foundational pieces. They need to know about, for example, the Great Depression. They need to know about the Dust Bowl. They need to know about migrant workers. And so we have tools for that in the reading process called critical concepts. So every text has a context, right? Every text, I'm kind of going into like session 3, but every text has a context. And those contexts can be brought to life through critical concepts. Critical concepts are terms that are either in the text or outside of the text that we want to teach our kids. So I would teach things like the Dust Bowl. I would teach things like the Great Depression, but I wouldn't teach them in 45-minute segments. I would teach them probably in lecture format, maybe in some sort of poster activity where they're learning very quickly, the 5 to 10 minutes, what these things are. So it gives them some understanding. What we really need to understand is that there were some people who were suffering, and there were people who lived a certain way that we don't see anymore. And that's what they need to know to understand the relationships and understand the hierarchies of these people's social positions. So that's what they need. So just some fun things to think about, and think about how we can spend more of our time in a classroom teaching the skills that we're going to learn through this whole workshop. So I appreciate you guys sharing in your chat and then also speaking. I think that was Alicia and Jennifer. Genius Hour, just want to make sure. Yeah, so real quickly, Genius Hour is something that I believe stems from Google. So Google, whether you follow them as a company or not, but they're a very interesting business model. One thing is they serve all their employees, I think, either free food or next to free with 5-star chefs, and they do that so that their employees don't leave to lunch, and so they're always collaborating. So when they go to lunch, they're on campus, they're on their Google campus, and they are talking and working together. In addition to the constant collaboration that Google promotes, Google also has 20% of their workday for all employees. They can do whatever they want creatively. So as long as they are thinking about a passion of theirs, they have 20% of their workday. So that, however you want to break that down, it's breaks down to like 2 hours a day, or every Friday they don't have to do their job. They do not have to do their normal job. What they do is whatever they want. Not shopping, not booking trips for vacation, but they build things, they create things. It's supposed to be for their imagination. And through that, Google gets stronger and stronger and stronger because the employees come up with these amazing things to do online, and Google says, I'll take it. So Guru is an example of that. Guru, if you've never heard of that before, is a free product that Google provides. And Guru is like a synthesis of content where teachers and companies put together these great lessons across content. It's totally free, and Guru was produced by one of these genius hours, if you will. An employee came up with it, decided to run with it. Google loved it, they adopted it, they funded it, and now it's a full-blown product that Google has. And it's quite amazing. I've met the president. So Genius Hour is where you give kids a class period a week to explore an issue in the world that they feel needs attention. And it becomes a service project at the end, but through critical reading skills, close reading skills, they do research, break down texts, they go after problem after problem, try to find solutions, and then they start to do action research and then a service project. So some sort of solution in their local area to try to either spread awareness or to provide resources for a particular group. So this all stems at a Genius Hour. It's something that's becoming more and more popular, and it doesn't excuse the close reading component. They can do close reading of the research that they're doing, and then they report back, they talk in groups about what they're seeing in the world, what they're seeing as an issue, and then they work together with you and other adults in the community to try to come up with some sort of solution. It can be very, very small. It can be school-based, site-based solutions, or it can be even more global through nonprofit organizations. So it's kind of cool. I truly believe it comes from Google, though. I think that it's a concept that people are looking at and saying, I wonder if we can do that in education, and tap into more of those private school practices and homeschooling practices, because homeschooling does a lot of that kind of stuff, where kids have control of their curriculum. It's science, but they can learn anything they want in science, or it's math, but they can learn anything they want in math. So there's some different components to homeschooling. Okay. Good. It's a good conversation. And it's good that it's live. I hope you're realizing the value in this being live versus a recorded webinar. So I can respond to you, you can respond to me, we can share ideas, and it's so much more enriching than sitting at a computer and just hearing a recording that doesn't have an investment in you. So, okay, I'm gonna continue if you guys don't mind. I'm going to share my screen, so my face is going to disappear. And we're back to the presentation. So a reading process then, before we get into purpose-driven reading and the reading process that Literacy TA provides, I want to go over what a reading process really is at the heart, or what a good reading process is. I'm going to read this to you. I know you can read. But I just want to make sure that all the points are heard and understood. It says an effective reading process is inquiry-based. So I want to stop there and think for a second. Inquiry-based, a reading process. So how is it, when I think about inquiry, I think about asking questions. So how is a reading process focusing on asking questions? Well, let's continue and see where it leads us. With each reread of a text, students ask different questions that lead them to deeper understanding. Okay, so from the first process, or the first step in the process, to the last step in the process, I'm gonna teach my kids to ask different types of questions, every time asking more and more challenging questions of a text. So as I ask questions, I'm going to learn new information. And as I learn new information, my understanding should increase. A successful reading process, continuing on in the third sentence, a successful reading process also models for students the conscious and sometimes subconscious decisions proficient readers make while reading. Okay, so not only is it inquiry-based, but it's also a window into decision making. It's a corridor, if you will, into the types of thoughts and actions that readers take. So it says the singular goal of any reading process should be deep comprehension. So the reading process that we teach in our schools, and Literacy TA is a framework that is school-wide. This is nothing I'm going to present to you today is for English only or for poetry. This is truly a process for all readers in all content area. If we teach this across the board, students will gain deep comprehension of the text that they read. And it's not by chance, and it's not by luck. It's by a deliberate process, a purposeful approach to attacking texts. That's what this is about. And so what close reading does is it not only gives you that process, but it also is going to give you the tools and the skills that go along with each of the steps in that process. And here it is. So reading process. So there are 5 steps to this process. Now what's great about Literacy TA, among many things, is the idea that all of our materials are visual. We do this on purpose because we are an online platform. We do have our books, but our majority of tools and resources are online. And because they're online, we want it to look attractive. So all of our handouts, our teacher guides, our student worksheets are all attractive because they're designed to be projected. They're designed to be on the screen so that you're not making photocopies. Since we know this, we also give you permission to make posters out of our handouts. So this already looks like, this is a student handout, right? But to me, it looks like a poster. So we want to make sure that if you want to put these on your wall, do it. We want kids to see this. We want students to understand the process for breaking down text, and we want them to be supported. Remember, going back to the achievement triangle, we want them to be supported through explicit modeling, and this is one piece of explicit modeling, giving them the 5 steps and reminding them how we work through those 5 steps. Now, we're going to be doing this throughout the training. We're going to go through every one of these steps throughout the training. So when you're done, you're going to feel very confident that you know the 5 steps, you know skills to support the 5 steps, so that you can bring them back to your classroom and eventually bring them back to your school. This handout can be part of their binders, can be part of group sets, or they can be blown up into a larger format and placed on the wall for students. And it's going to walk them through the types of questioning we're talking about, and it's going to walk them through and remind them about the skills that readers use when reading closely. Okay. So you have steps 1 to 5, which I guess we can go and go through them very quickly. You're not going to memorize them, so I know we'll get to them a deeper, but first is understanding your reading task. The first thing you need to do is ask yourself, why am I reading this? And be able to have an answer. And when teachers don't give you that answer, you need to be able to say, I have ways and tools to get that answer. I have been taught how to create a purpose when a purpose hasn't been given to me. Number 2, preview your text. What does this text offer? What is in it? What sorts of features are available? Is this a argument? Is this a textbook? Is this an op-ed from a newspaper? And how do I know? Read for comprehension, breaking down the main ideas and understanding the details. Then I can go into deeper meaning. So step 4 is looking at specific support in a text, looking at text structure, looking at the author and what is motivating the author to write, looking at point of view. So this is a deeper level of understanding. And then the last one in step 5 is one more reread where we organize and cite information. We organize the information based on the reading purpose, we cite information based on our task, and we move on to the writing process from there. So these are the 5 that we're going to go over in detail. So this next slide, which caused me to go backwards a little bit, is about having a reading purpose. So before students start, we need to have a writing task or a prompt to help them focus. And I'm a huge proponent of this. I believe that kids need purpose before they start reading. What I used to do is I would read a text, whether it be informational text, argument, poem, a novel, and we'd read it and we'd talk about it and we'd do all these things, and then I'd give them the prompt. And the prompt required them to go back and read for the prompt's purpose. I started teaching at San Diego State University years ago as a lecturer in the Department of Rhetoric and Writing Studies. I have my master's in rhetoric, and so that allowed me at San Diego State to teach RWS, which is Rhetoric and Writing Studies 100, and RWS 200. And what we did was give kids prompts first. So we would give them the prompt, and then we would assign the reading. And it dawned on me that this should be the way we always do it. Why am I giving my writing task after the fact? Why am I not giving my writing task before they read so that they read with purpose instead of reading for they don't know why? And I took that knowledge that I learned as a lecturer at San Diego State University and I applied it to my high school classroom. And as soon as I did that, my instruction made more sense to me. My instruction made more sense to my students, and they learned more from their reading because they knew why they were reading. So we're going to move into an activity that's going to ask us about different purposes for reading. So we're going to go ahead and learn a little bit about writing tasks and prompts before we do this. And then I'm going to give you a document that we're all going to collaborate on. And you're going to be able to share some of the purposes that you choose for your kids for reading. So when we talk about writing tasks and prompts, there are 2 points that I want to make. Point number 1 is the writing tasks guide our reading, our kids' reading. So if I give a kid a writing task, they know how to attack a poem, for example, or why I think that poem is worth reading. So there's 3 questions we can ask in order to understand point 1. How will I read this text based on the task? So a student needs to be able to ask that question. How will I read this text? What will I do? What decisions will I make based on what my teacher is asking me? Number 2, what am I expected to know? Do I need to know something about language? Do I need to know something about structure? Do I need to know something about the genre? What am I really being asked to know? And then the last one is what I have to, oh, sorry, I'm missing a verb there. What do I have to do once you've read the text? So I can clean that up. Sorry about that. What do I have to do once I've read the text? So now, what output is there? Are you asking me to do some sort of collaborative task? Am I going to be making a poster? What do you want me to demonstrate as a result of reading this? Do I have to write my own text that's going to model or mimic what I've just read? Giving them all that information strengthens their ability to read because now they have purpose. Now they understand, okay, so if I have all these things you want me to do, I can clearly read this specifically for the things you want me to read it for. Because we know text can be read for so many reasons, right? So many purposes. So we want to guide that for them. Point number 2, and this is a biggie, so you should recline in your chair and let out a sigh here. We do not have to ask our students to respond with a formal paper with every writing task. So just because I'm asking you to develop a writing task for the text, that doesn't mean they have to respond to it. That doesn't mean that they have to write a paper every single time they read something. As a matter of fact, students can do all sorts of things. The list underneath gives you some ideas. They can complete a graphic organizer at the end. They can do an outline. They can do what we call, it's a speech, but we call them 1-minute speeches, which is a different training, but 1-minute speeches. We have posters. We have short writing pieces. There doesn't have to be this long, drawn-out paper at the end of our reading. But I do want that question. I do want that question because not only are students going to get the experience in breaking down prompts, which they need to be successful on the ACT, to be successful on the SAT, they need it to be successful in other classes. So all of these practices of breaking down prompts can come more frequently if we ask it before a reading. And once that's been asked, they use that to guide their reading. Then they can choose, or we can choose for them, how the output is going to look. And it doesn't have to be an essay. Just because we're giving them a writing task or a prompt at the beginning doesn't mean they have to write on it. And I really want that to be clear because you'll feel overwhelmed if you come out of this session thinking, wow, every time I assign a text, I have to have a writing prompt, and then that means they're writing an essay. You know how many essays we would be writing each year and how many essays I'd be grading? Believe me, I don't want that. I do not want that for you. But there are things that they can do other than essays. All right, so let's do our interactive activity here. So I'm going to press escape. I'm going to show you the agenda. You're going to need the agenda for this. You can't click on my screen, so you're going to have to pull up the agenda on your computer. You're gonna think you can click on my screen, but you can't. The video, unfortunately, is not interactive. So from the document, I can see all your anonymous. We've got the anonymous duck. We've got the anonymous rhino. I love that stuff. On this document, there is an activity right here. It says explore purposes for reading fiction and nonfiction texts. Okay? So I'm going to click on this. It says start, and I'd like you guys to follow me. And it's going to take me to a document that I've created for you. And on this document, we're going to sign in, and this is the way I'm going to get your information for your TA account. So as you see up top, it says Jonathan Lemaster, that's my full name, and then it has my email. So if you guys can do that for me, I'd greatly appreciate it. So I'd like your full name and then your email address for your school.
Okay, I feel completely lost. Do we need to go to the agenda to get this document?
Yes, you do. And on the agenda, I'll show you on the agenda. It's right here where it says start.
Okay, great. I'm going to do it now.
Perfect.
Hi, so I'm trying to upload that information, but it won't allow me to do so on the agenda. I see everyone else typing their names, but it won't allow me to do so.
So you're trying to type and it won't let you?
No.
Okay. Can you put your email address in the chat? Do you see the chat?
Yep.
And try that, and I will try to share it personally to you and see what happens.
Hey, Jonathan.
Yes.
I'm going to add my content specialist as well. They're doing a training for me right now, but I want them to be able to have access to the site.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
Okay, so I sent, is it Chantel or Chantel?
Chantel.
Chantel, okay. So Chantel, I just sent an invite to you through your email. You might be able to try it even now, the document without going to your email and seeing if you now have access.
Okay.
And if you don't, try going and getting it from your email. There should be an invite in your email.
Yeah, I'm still not able to, so I'll go to my email.
All right, so while you're working on that, let's go ahead and scroll down to, thank you for doing that, by the way. Let's scroll down to the second page where the activity starts. And it says, what are some purposes for reading fiction and nonfiction texts? So what I'd like you guys to do is come up with some purposes that you guys have used in the past or that you know of that you might not have gotten to. What are some purposes? And then here's going to be the trick. And it's going to take us a little bit of time. We're probably going to spend about 10 minutes here. I would like you to try to align that to a standard. So instead of us just having purposes, that we think are important, we want to make sure that our reading purposes are aligning to our standards. There's going to be a little bit of work with tabs that you're going to need to do. You're going to need to, you can go standard first if you want, or you can go purpose and then find your standard. But looking at your standards for your state, what sort, cut and paste, what are some of the standards or a standard that supports that purpose? So for example, yes, if there's evidence, I'm reading for evidence, great. There's going to be a state standard that supports that purpose for reading, and you would paste it right here in the state standard. So I'd like you guys to work on this collaborative document just as an exercise of looking at reading purposes and how they vary, and then looking at hopefully finding that our reading purposes match our standards. And if they don't, there's two things I can say. One is, that's probably okay, right? That's probably okay, as long as we don't always teach that purpose. And then two, if they do, pat yourself on the back and let that be some affirmation that, you know what, we're doing the right thing, that these reading purposes are important. So I'm going to let you guys work a little bit. I can hear you, but I'm going to mute my mic. That way you don't hear me, you know, doing whatever. So I'm going to mute my mic, but if I can hear you. So if you have any questions, you want to say anything, and I'm going to be monitoring the document. I might even drop comments into the document. So we're going to take about 10 minutes. So at 8:15, I'm going to start speaking again, and we'll go over this document together.
So everyone, you know how to access the new Georgia Standards of Excellence. Go to georgiastandards.org, click on your grade level, and then over to the right, it'll say Georgia Standards of Excellence, new document.
Okay, so this is an excellent start, and really, really good work. You guys had no problem identifying purposes for reading and then supporting those purposes with your state standards, which is awesome. And I hope that, in a lot of ways, these state standards give us some permission not to teach everything. When we don't have guidance, it's a little bit harder because we feel like we've got to cover everything under the sun. And giving us some very specific things to focus on, like author's argument or determining theme, narrows the focus for us so that we can hit those standards more often throughout the year instead of trying to figure out, everything they need to know about fiction. Very specific things for us to do, which I like. And then there was a conversation, I don't know if you saw in the chat, but you can comment by placing your cursor on a particular word or in front of a word, and then you can click on the chat box up at the top. And that chat can help focus different discussions on a particular idea. And we were talking about building knowledge, building background knowledge. And I had said in my first chat comment that this is an interesting one because it doesn't explicitly say in our standards how to do that or if that's important or not. Just like analyzing texts is not really talked about, or sorry, analyzing prompts is not really talked about in our standards, but we know it's really important. And then when the standard was pasted in, it gave light to how this building knowledge can be supported and driven by standards. And that is, kids build their own background knowledge. Kids do their research and learn about something coming into class, which is great. Fantastic. So I comment on that idea as well. So this is a good list. This is a good list to get us kind of started and acquainted with what different reading purposes are, what they can be, okay. And they're always going to be here for you and your staff, so you can go back and you click on the agenda and look at what you guys have written, build on it, come back and reflect on it. That's what's great about using this interactive Google platform, is that everything is saved and connected and accessible when you need it to be, when you need it. So that's good. So thank you guys for this. And as a reminder, I'm going to take this list here. I'm going to turn it into welcome emails that I will send to you after this session is over. That welcome email then needs to be opened, and you need to follow the instructions to create a new password. And at that time, you'll be able to access the TA. So let's go to our agenda, because we're going to be wrapping up here pretty quickly. Make sure that we've covered the things that we've talked about, make sure that we've at least been introduced to them. So we talked about the achievement triangle, which is that idea of challenging and raising text complexity or cognitive complexity and making sure that we support students through that process. The cycle of independence from the teacher all the way back to the individual student. Skill-based instruction and what that means and why that's important. So making skills the focus of our instruction versus the content. Purpose-driven reading, so giving what we just finished, giving students a purpose for reading, and giving them some clear guidance as to how we want them to read. And then text selection, which is kind of embedded. So based on our purposes, we want to choose texts that lend themselves well to that type of reading. So for example, just a very simple example, if my purpose for my kids is to read argument, I need to find a text that has a very clear argument. If my purpose for my kids is to understand theme, then I need to find a text that is fiction, number one, and then number two has some thematic pieces that my kids can find relatively easy at start, and then it can be more and more complex as I teach it over and over again. So we did our activity, and then we have another activity, which is Explore Literacy Today's 5 Steps to Confident Reading. And I'm going to do that with you in just a minute. And then we have a Continue Learning. So over here, what you guys are going to do is once you get your TA, you're going to click on Skill Library, and I want you to explore what the resource you're going to receive today. And then you have a little bit of a homework assignment. Oh, I'm jumping ahead. I'm sorry. Your homework assignment is next time. So your only homework assignment, I was going to have you analyze prompts. We're not doing that yet. Your only homework assignment for this session is to explore the skill library. So next time we meet, I want to make sure that you guys have a little bit of an understanding of what this resource is. So in closing, let me take you there so that you have an idea of what this is. So you can follow the link to get there. It's literacyta.com. And this is our home page. We have our very easy to use navigation at the top. And the skill library is the second one in. So I'm going to click on skill library. And we've organized all of our skills. Remember those 60 skills and hundreds of activities? The 60 skills are organized into 4 functional categories: reading nonfiction, reading fiction, writing center, and then speaking and listening. All of these should be closely aligned to your standards so that you're not having to rethink what your standards are and what we call them. They're all pretty similar. So I'm going to click on reading nonfiction because that's one of the areas that we as teachers need to focus on most so that we're preparing our kids for college and careers. So remember those 5 steps. So where I'm at right now is called the Skill Library, Reading Nonfiction, and we've organized this section by the 5 steps. So here are those 5 steps that you saw in that poster or that handout. And then next to it are skills that you can teach for each of the 5 steps. So this first one is analyzing text-dependent prompts, and then preview and predicting, read 1, speak 2, write 3 for comprehension, marking a text for reading for deeper meaning, and then 6 organizers at a glance. So what you're seeing is a skill that you can use to execute step 1, and then 2, all the way to 5. But here's where it gets really exciting for me, and I hope for you. Right here in this drop-down window are predetermined reading purposes. Not all of them, not everything under the sun, but definitely some things to get started. So if you click on Getting Started, this drop-down window opens up, and now I have some different reading purposes. Read for main idea, read for argument, read for information, read collaboratively. Now look at this. If I click on Read Collaboratively, all of these change out, all of my skills, and all of these activities are collaborative. So even though they're different than my first, you can see that they align to the process. So I can choose anything. I can choose argument. And now the skills change, right? Analyzing evidence, argument map, but they're now aligned to my reading process. So we get you started with the 60 skills through this very, very user-friendly interface where you can choose your reading purpose to get started, and the skills refresh and update and then based on your purpose, and they're aligned to the process. So you don't ever have to worry, well, is this in the am I in the right step in the like how am I supposed to do this? So this is a way for you to get started as you begin using our tools and resources. So read and visualize. So this is for groups of students or just for a day that makes it highly visual. So you're going to have visual activities that you're going to use while reading instead of maybe something that's a little bit more silent. So this is one thing that I want you to play with is the different purposes by selecting. And the way I got here, because you're probably now awake and interested in what's going on here, skill library, I got there by clicking on the navigation, and I went into nonfiction. Now, if you go into reading fiction, it's the same layout, but different skills. So I click on reading nonfiction, and then now I have my 5 steps, right? And I have my skills on the right side that go along with each step. And if I click on my drop-down, I now have access to these different reading purposes that will refresh and give me some different, focus for my reading. Now this is on the teacher end, right? I wouldn't click read collaboratively and say to my kids, okay, now go do this yourself. This is like a lesson plan for me. That could go 2 or 3 days. So I would start with step 1 and then move to step 2 and then 3 all the way to 5. And my kids are learning these skills. And we'll talk about explicit instruction and what that looks like and what that means as we go. But your homework assignment is just to get familiar with the skill library. There's a lot here. I don't want it to be overwhelming, but at sometimes you might. The good thing is everything is very easy to get to. Within 3 clicks you can be somewhere. So for example, I want to go to an argument writing plan. Right? I'm teaching my kids how to write argument. I want a writing plan. Go to Writing Center, Argument Writing Plan. 2 clicks. Okay, that was nice. I want to go to the skill library and I want a fiction reading purpose. Okay, so skill library, reading fiction. And here's my purposes. Analyzing characters, reading analytically, breaking down literature analytically. Okay, I want to learn how to maybe get my kids to read for information. So I click on my skill library. I click on my down, read for information. Now click on these 2 and it will take you to the lesson. So all of these are individual lessons. So if I click on summarizing main ideas, it's going to take me to a page that gives me my tools and resources. And then I want you to explore. I'm going to give you some quizzes when you see me next about what you found, because there's a lot of cool things, and don't be afraid to click on stuff. You can't break it, you can't hurt it. So click on things like these little blue rings. You might want to click on because they do stuff. I don't want to tell you because I want you to play with it. Click on the handouts. Click on this little guy right here. Click on the lesson plan. I want you to play around with the website. So that's going to be your homework. Okay. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, open up for any questions that you might have, and then we're going to conclude the session. You guys have been awesome. Hopefully it's been informative and interesting, and hopefully you're looking forward to our next session, which I think, if I look at my calendar, just want to make sure it's coming up here. It's probably even tomorrow. Let's see. No, we don't have one tomorrow, but we do have 2 next week. We have one on July 1st and July 2nd. I'm going to be in Philadelphia at the ISTE conference over the weekend and then on Monday. So we had to push the training over to the 1st and the 2nd. So that's what we're looking at is July 1st and July 2nd will be our next 2 sessions. Do you guys have any questions or thoughts, comments? Okay, what I'm going to do is stop the broadcast. It can always be watched from the link where it says a recorded broadcast, and you guys can take a look, fast forward, rewind if there's anything you want to hear again. That will be easy, and I'm going to sign off and say thank you very much for a great morning. Good to meet all of you, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Have a great weekend, enjoy, and get some rest.
You too. Thank you.
You're welcome.